In Venezuela, the re-elected president Nicolás Maduro Moros denounced the destabilizing plan of the international extreme right wing that sought to create chaos in the country after the presidential elections held on July 28th. The Israeli regime and the United States have dangerously raised tensions in the Middle East with the assassinations of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh and Hezbollah's second most important commander Fuad Shukr. And in India, authorities reported that the death toll from landslides has risen to 151. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, the re-elected president Nicolás Maduro Moros denounced the destabilizing plan of the international extreme right wing that sought to create chaos in the country after the presidential elections held on July 28th. During a press conference, Maduro expressed that the country is in peace thanks to measures taken in the face of the vandalism perpetrated by some groups financed and trained by the international extreme right. In this sense, the national president assured that the country will not fall into the hands of fascism and international imperialism. At the same time, he stated that if these events continue, he will call the people to a new revolution with different characteristics to the one that has been known in the country for 25 years. During a press conference, the president announced that he went to the Supreme Court of Justice to ask the Electoral Court to proceed to investigate everything that happened on July 28th and after this day.
I went to the Maximum Court of Justice so that the electoral hall proceed to pronounce the resolution of the electoral of Sunday, 28th of July, and to decide from the point of view of investigation, technical investigation, and institutional and judicial, and from the point of view of the Venezuelan laws, to decide what happened on the 28th of July and after the 28th of July, and to establish with clarity and legal sentence the results, the definite results that made me winner of the election on the July 28th, including all the steps of audits, all the audit steps that were made. In Venezuela, there are 16 audits, and all those 16 audits were made. All the audits were made.
At the press conference, the president also demanded the release of all records related to the presidential elections.
So I have demanded immediately the Electoral Court has all the diligence to obtain all the legal data, all the National Electoral Council, all the investigations of the Attorney General, and also to demand the information to the 10 candidates, presidential candidates, one by one, to the 38 political parties, and ratified to the press today with this long introduction that the great patriotic pole and the Socialist Unity Party of Venezuela are ready to deliver all the voting registers of all the 100% of the tables to this electoral court when it's demanded by the electoral court.
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro went on Wednesday to the Supreme Court of Justice and filed a writ of amparo before the Electoral Chamber of said court to validate the election of July 28th. There he was received by the President of the highest court, Magistrate Carislia Rodriguez, also President of the Electoral Chamber, to whom he handed the document. He did so in the company of the Attorney General of the Republic, Reinaldo Muñoz. The rights for the Electoral Chamber to address this attack on the electoral process and make clear everything that needs to be clarified. President Maduro pointed out that 100% of the tally sheets of the past elections will be made available. He affirmed that he is willing to publicly present all the tally sheets of the votes cast in the elections, the results of which are disputed by the extreme opposition.
it would be maybe the most criminal act till nowadays. I said it on time. Some people didn't believe, because they say believe to see to believe, and as Saint Thomas said, bless the ones who believe without seeing, but bless the ones who see and believe. And let's be united, those all. Let's be united all. It is a criminal act, not only because of the violence, but criminal for as they search for criminals to attack, burn people alive, and burn public sectors as health facilities, to threaten life of the families, to burn markets and companies, vehicles, and attack their own people. And this is all directed by a perverse and criminal group.
The constitutional president of Venezuela ratified his willingness to collaborate in the investigation of the electoral chamber regarding his victory in the presidential elections of Sunday, July 28th.
And I have said that I am willing to be summoned, to be interrogated at all forms, be investigated by the electoral chamber as presidential candidate, winner of July 28 elections, and as head of state. I submitted to justice, and I have said beyond, as head of politics and revolutionary leader of Venezuela and son of Commander Chavez, that the great patriotic Paul and the United Socialist Party is ready to present all polling stations, all ballots, and I hope that the electoral chamber does the same with every candidate and every party.
Also in Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro presented an array of measures to crack down violent acts committed by fascist far-right groups known as comanditos. During a joint meeting with the Council of State and the National Defense Council, the Venezuelan president explained the main initiative, which entails the creation of a $10 million economic fund to support victims affected by the far-right violence. In addition, authorities agreed on setting a special commission led by lawmaker Jorge Rodriguez, which plays the role of defending Venezuelan public opinion to counter attacks and speeches full of hate and violence on outlets and social media. In terms of citizen security, they will implement a special scheme with the framework of the second phase of the Republic plan that involves the Bolivarian National Armed Forces and the police forces in a joint project with the Cuadrantes, the Paz, and the Popular Power to patrol and protect streets, avenues, urbanizations, and communities from the threat of the comanditos groups. Both councils were united to appoint Diosdado Cabello and Minister Remigio Ceballos Ichazo in charge of monitoring this special plan. These actions represent a comprehensive effort by the Venezuelan government to address violence and protect the population from attacks by these criminal groups. On Tuesday in Venezuela, members of the criminal group known as Tren de los Llanos, at the service of the far right, attacked again state institutions. In this regard, Venezuelan Public Prosecutor's Office indicated that the events occurred in the municipality of José Tadeo Monagas in Altagracia state of Guarico, in the center of the country. The violent men arrived on motorcycles and attacked a dependency attached to the mayor's office. It is worth mentioning that this criminal organization, which is accused of serious crimes related to murder, rape, torture, drug trafficking, and human trafficking, joins the list of criminal groups hired by the extremist opposition led by María Corina Machado and Edmundo González. On Wednesday, the Attorney General of Venezuela, Tarek William Saab, addressed the actions of the far-right groups seeking to tarnish the results of the July 28th elections. In this sense, William Saab pointed out that, as they had been warning for months, there were plans of the extreme right wing to declare the election as a fraud after July 28th and began with terrorist acts throughout the nation. On the other hand, William Saab pointed out that the Public Ministry is investigating each of these criminal groups and assured that 20 subjects were apprehended for crimes that included attacks on military officials. Furthermore, he also emphasized that the far right is using a structured group of organized crime known as El Tren del Llano, associated to paramilitary groups.
I want to give a preliminary report, a preliminary one, about the actions that I'm mentioning there, all linked to the actions that I am mentioning there. Up to this moment we have arrested 1,062 people. If some of them, according to previous investigations, are proved to have no participations in these actions despite of being there, we have a justice system and fair trials, so they will be released. However, those found responsible, as the ones I am showing, all of them are responsible, will be sentenced to many years of prison.
And the Attorney General ruled out the participation of social unions and student movements during the guarimbas.
In relation to what I'm saying, I could highlight a breaking point in what they have tried this time. This time you don't see, no one can point out to me that have seen, in these guarimbas, in these brutally negative actions, students, for example, or members of a trade union, or again a social movement protesting against an alleged fraud.
International observers reaffirmed transparency in Venezuela's presidential elections as well as the effectiveness of the electoral system. The joint preliminary report highlights the normality of the electoral process in full guarantee of the citizens' right to vote in peace and in organized manner, for which they recognize the work of the National Electoral Council. They further praised the Republic plan for thoroughly conducting the citizen security and the custody of the electoral material without any kind of incidents. Likewise, they congratulate the Venezuelan people who, despite multiple pressures and interfering actions, gave an example of civility during the peaceful, orderly and transparent exercise of their right to vote. The Argentine and American Jurist Associations, the Chilean Human Rights Commission, among other organizations, denounced the siege of the Venezuelan embassy in Buenos Aires, which they described as an unacceptable violation of the Vienna Convention. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Israel and the United States have dangerously raised tensions in the Middle East with a series of lethal operations. The assassination of Hezbollah's second most important commander in Beirut was followed on Wednesday by the execution of the leader of the Hamas Palestinian resistance, Ismail Haniyeh, in Iran, while he was attending the opening of President Masoud Pezeshkian. Hours later, the U.S.-led coalition struck Iraqi formations, leaving at least 4 deaths. Following an urgent meeting of the Supreme Security Council in Iran, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei has vowed severe punishment against the Israeli occupier. Simultaneously, resistance movements in Iraq and Yemen declared themselves ready for combat against Tel Aviv. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has strongly condemned the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, leader of the Islamic resistance movement Hamas. The Palestinian president has considered the attack against Haniyeh, which happened a few hours after the Israeli assassination of the number 2 of the Lebanese Shiite party militia Hezbollah, as a cowardly act and a dangerous event at a time of maximum tension in the region. U.S. Department Deputy Spokesperson Vendant Patel declined to offer an opinion on the Israeli airstrikes in Lebanon and reaffirmed Washington's support for Tel Aviv. Likewise, in the face of the Israeli aggression in the southern suburb of Beirut, the spokesperson assured that his nation is committed to diplomacy to avoid an escalation between the Zionist army and the Lebanese resistance, while the White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre further refrained from speaking about the bombing and stressed that it is a war that can be avoided. The media reported that the action left martyrs and wounded, while rescue operations continue at the site. In this context, Musa Abu Marzouk, the current senior Hamas official, has warned that the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh by the Zionist regime will not go unanswered, and he described the assassination of Haniyeh as a cowardly act by the occupier. At the same time, it was learned that the Islamic resistance in Iraq and the Houthis in Yemen offered their lives to take revenge for the criminal acts perpetrated by Israel in Lebanon and Iran. The Palestinian resistance has warned that Hamas will fight until victory is achieved, while in Palestine they have called for a march and a general strike. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In India, hundreds of rescue workers are searching through mud and debris for multiple landslides that have killed at least 151 people in Kerala state. Officials said on Wednesday that nearly 1,000 people have been rescued and 187 are still missing after landslides, although their efforts were hampered by persistent rainfall that collapsed numerous roads in Wayanad. Kerala's Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan said that hospitals were treating 186 people, making this one of the worst natural disasters the state has ever seen. At the same time, the Indian Army announced the deployment of more than 300 soldiers to the area to assist security forces and regional rescue teams in the rescue effort.
I have no hope. There is very little possibility. My wife's father is around 70 to 74 years old and has difficulty walking. We have no hope. That's how bad the situation is there.
There were families that had 2 members and others that had 8 members. There have been instances where we have only found 1 body and the other 7 bodies. We have no idea where they are. Many kilometers away in Nilamber town, parts of bodies have been discovered. Here we have found parts of 3 bodies. A woman's body was missing its head and everything below the waist. This is the situation we are facing today.
On Wednesday, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, held talks with Prabowo Subianto, president-elect and Minister of Defense of Indonesia, to negotiate for a free trade zone agreement.
We also expressed the hope that the agreement on a free trade zone between the Eurasian Economic Community and Indonesia, which is almost ready for signing, will also play a very positive, noticeable role in the development of our trade and economic ties.
We consider Russia as a great friend, and I would like to continue to maintain and enhance this relationship.
The government of Libya repatriated 369 irregular migrants on Tuesday to their countries of origin, including more than 100 women and children. In this regard, Mohamed Barda, head of the Libyan Interior Ministry, announced that the measure is aimed at curbing irregular immigration while giving details on the repatriation of 204 Nigerians and 165 Malaysians. Meanwhile, Barda also confirmed that the flights were carried out in coordination with the International Organization for Migration, which provides free return flights for migrants and helps reintegrate them into their home countries. Libya has been criticized for its treatment of migrants and refugees, with accusations from human rights groups ranging from extortion to slavery. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.